You want more? You got more. Breaking down the trade value of the NBA with all those crucial factors. The top of the list is as exciting and enticing to discuss as anywhere else throughout this, let alone some of those names around the league that Doug and I say, hey, I wouldn't mind taking a deep dive on some value there. We break it all down right after the theme music.
You are Locked On Nets, your daily Brooklyn Nets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Brooklyn, yo.
Oh, yes, it is the Locked On Nets podcast right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team, the Brooklyn Nets, every single day. Over there, you're going to find Doug Norrie, owner-operator DFSR, for all your daily fantasy sports rankings. He's got you covered. DraftKings, FanDuel, that's your guy. Over here, it's Adam Armbrecht, hosting the One Giant podcast with my boy Andy Mack, covering Big Blue all off-season long. We thank you for making us your first listen of the day, free on all those great platforms. And Doug, part two, diving in on this NBA trade value. We really touched on Kevin Durant yesterday, focused a lot on Kyrie Irving and Ben Simmons because of where they were on this list. But the top is really a collection of this elite talent around Kevin Durant that felt worth a little extra dive.
Yeah, so just to reference back what we talked about yesterday, the folks over at Hoops Hype, which is a great, just kind of a comprehensive basketball site that has just a lot of different information, a lot of rumors, salary stuff. They got pretty total one-stop shop, but a really good place to try to get basketball information. Put out their top 100 in terms of trade value for NBA players, and they broke it down by age and by salary and sort of skills, and they try to factor in, a longer list than just who do you want for one game right now? Or who do you want for even for one season right now? There's a lot of other factors when you talk about trade value and assets that would be sent out to acquire the player. So we wanted to talk about Kevin Durant, but just as a quick reminder, Kyrie Irving and Ben Simmons were in the 50s and the 90s on this list. And if you want the breakdown of what we did yesterday, go check that one out, because we talk a lot about how their value is just so crazy all over the place. Frankly, almost impossible to even try to figure out where their trade value is. But then, you get down to Kevin Durant, where he was on the list. And I would say I was a little surprised about where he landed on this list. And just as a quick recap on this one, number 1 was Giannis, 2 was Luka Doncic, 3 was Jokic, 4 Tatum, 5 Joel Embiid, 6 Trae Young, 7 Devin Booker, 8, and then we get down to 8 Kevin Durant, and right behind him is Ja Morant and Steph Curry. Yeah. So that's your top 10. And I don't know, we didn't spend too much time on it yesterday because we wanted to talk more Kyrie and Simmons, because those were the real scroll down, you might miss it near the end kind of guys. But where did you land on where they landed on Kevin Durant at number 8?
Yeah, I'm going to contextualize that by reading this. Where a lot of players above are mostly in their primes, Young still has a lot more room for improvement. It's possible his trade value nears the top of these rankings in the next several years. That's Trae Young, who was at 6. And yesterday, when we discussed it a little bit, I probably have him a couple of spots higher here. I understand. It was interesting.
Who'd you have a couple of spots higher? Durant or
Kevin Durant?
Yeah,
I would have Kevin.
Okay.
Yeah, excuse me. Contextualizing that. Hey, at 6, that's there. I would have Kevin Durant over top of Trae Young. Obviously, also there behind him is Devin Booker. Trae Young has a lot of money coming his way. The age factor is on his side, certainly. Positional scarcity, which was a big factor they talked about in this. I don't know. I can look at his position and Kevin Durant's and go, no, Kevin Durant's much more crucial, let alone what Kevin Durant brings to the table. We mentioned, as detailed as this list was, they basically, it seems weighted, in my opinion. Now, obviously, Kevin Durant's a little bit older, not just than Trae Young, but in general NBA terms, they seem to weight the factors around Kyrie Irving and around Ben Simmons as much into the way they discussed Kevin Durant's trade value. I don't see a world. Remember, we're talking about trade value with all these factors considered. Name me a team that wouldn't immediately want to put Kevin Durant onto their roster to help them win a championship. I just don't see a world where anyone is necessarily scared off by any of the factors that you would bring into Kevin Durant's situation.
Yeah, and I think this is one of the places where the list went a little weird. I think in general, I agree with almost not everything here, because look, if you to really only ultimately disagree with it and agree with it, you have to go and make your own top 100 list. Right. That's the only place you can really start disagreeing with the whole thing, a whole cloth, is to say, okay, let's see your whole list. and then we'll compare the two lists side by side and look who's better. Like, it's a little disingenuous to just start slotting guys up and down, haphazardly because you want to pick a guy. Now, that being said, I think that in terms of just like the other way you can compare it is, would Team A trade for would Team A and Team B trade for these two players like straight up if the money worked, right?
Yeah.
And with Trae and Durant, it kind of does, and their contracts are on the same timeline. And there's like any world where the Hawks wouldn't trade right now for Kevin Durant for Trae Young, and I think that's totally crazy. And look, Trae's great. He's a unique offensive talent. He's among the very best offensive players in basketball. Like, point stop. Like, that's really not in debate. He's amazing. He can do things to defenses that a lot of other guys can't do. And like, there's no chance. Like, Brooklyn hangs the phone up immediately. And Atlanta is like, they're like, yeah, we'll do that. Right. Like, I think that I think if you just look at it from that stand, whereas like maybe the Booker thing, I don't think is as crystal clear, but if you're just using these other guys, I still think the Phoenix would do it too, obviously. But I just think like from that standpoint, this is where I agree with you. The list fell down on Durant because it was like factoring in Kyrie and Simmons. Like, that was part of Kevin Durant's trade value. And that's not the case. Like, I don't like those guys don't affect his trade value at all. That's like saying Bobby Portis affects Giannis's trade value. Like, it's right. Like,
Brook Lopez is long in the tooth. So
yeah, like how does like Russell Westbrook's fit with LeBron James affect LeBron's trade value? But again, they don't mention that, but for some reason with the Durant piece, they did. That's one piece I just don't really understand.
And it's funny too, just as we look around the top 10-ish of this list, Ja Morant to me is a guy you talk about, who's hanging up the phone immediately or who wants to do it. I think Memphis, if you said, hey, Kevin Durant for Ja Morant, I'm not saying that Memphis wouldn't do it, but they would look and go, what Ja Morant represents to me and his timeline and his money, all those factors would be a reason why not only do I think Kevin Durant should be above Trae Young, but I think that Ja Morant is probably pushing really closer to the heels of Trae Young as opposed to being further away. It's only 3 spots that we're talking about. He's right behind Kevin Durant at 9, but there's other names that just seem like they would be a little bit stronger.
And by the way, like
I'm category.
And even with these guys, like I'm even like just specifically with Trae Young here, I'm factoring in his age. Like that was not, I'm factoring in the age. And the reason the age thing doesn't really matter to me is like, even if you said like for the next 3 years, think about it this way. Can Trae Young be the best player on a championship team? I think the answer is probably not. Right. Like, I think that
that's a really good way to contextualize it too.
I think that answer is probably no. Could Trae Young be on a championship team? Yeah, but I don't think he can be the very best player. Now, just flip that question. And like, let's just say for the next 3 years or 2 years, right? For the next 3 years with what we've seen from Durant, can Durant be the best player on a championship team? The answer is yes. Like, the answer is a resounding yes. Like, we know that to be, I think, look, okay. Did he win one with Steph? And yeah, I get it. Okay. But like, when we just talk about his talent, I think we can agree that he can be the very best player on a championship team. And I don't think there's that too much debate. And I think if you just ask yourself that question, it just doesn't make sense. Like, to have them be 3 spots behind and not just like in the top 5 or 6.
Before we get out of it, because I want to turn my attention, there's a couple other guys who are just in the top 15 or 20-ish, and then some names. There's some interesting comps that I want to bring up as you get further through this list as well. But do you look at, since the finals are going on, Curry being there, like he's a 10. He's a 10. It feels fine. But maybe comparing him with Morant and with Trae Young, do you think that like Curry is more deserving? I know the money factors in, the age factors in, but again, if you told me straight up, would the Atlanta Hawks trade Trae Young for Steph Curry? I again think it's usually Atlanta saying yes to a lot of things and other teams saying, oh, I don't know. Let me mull that.
Yeah, the age stuff just does get hard here. So I'm admitting like the age regression around some of these players ends up becoming like a little bit weird, and you're trying to factor in like not year 1 of this trade, but year 4 or something like that. Like, that's where it becomes a little. And with Steph, I think I'm just mostly this.
Oh, by the way,
I think where I just mostly land on this is that Trae's too high. I think that's I think that's just like the theme here. It's like not even about the rest of the list. It's just like Trae Young's just too high, and that maybe is just the long and short of this section of the list. Like, where I could go back and forth on all these other guys. I just think that like him sitting there feels kind of nuts compared to some of the other players that you could even, and I'm factoring in age and money. And so maybe that's just my what's sticking in my craw a little bit.
And we'll get back into it here with some of these other top 20 names. Obviously, next contract is a factor of this that I think should actually weigh in some of the older players' favors, because maybe there isn't a next contract coming, so that doesn't mean you have to spend as much money on them. We'll get into that in a second here, right after we first tell you about our friends over at BetOnline.net. It's because it's your number one source for all the betting stats and sports info. You find the latest sports news, developments, the odds, the playoff series, the finals, NHL, NBA. It's all there for you. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sports wagering information, including live betting, esports, and more. Head over to the website or use your mobile device to get in on the latest trends in action. BetOnline, it's where the game starts. And we also, of course, let you know about our friends over at Built Bar. Oh, friends, it's caramel brownie. Do you love a chewy, chocolatey brownie? What about a caramel brownie with a little caramel swirl into the top? Yeah, I think you'd like that too. So good. But what if I told you you didn't want to risk all those nasty carbs and dirty sugars? How about you can get that plus 17 grams of protein, my friends? You're in luck, because caramel brownie bars are available at built.com right now, and you got to act fast because they're a fan favorite and it's a limited time action. You go over there, and not only are you getting that protein, you're also getting that lovely little dessert that only has 130 calories and just 4 grams of sugar. I would legitimately replace a regular brownie with one of these Built Bars right now. The best part, caramel brownie bars are covered in 100% real chocolate, like all those great bars over on built.com. And when you're over there, you go ahead and use that promo code LOCKED15. You're going to get 15% off on your order. That's promo code LOCKED15, 15% off at built.com. Okay, Doug. The other things that we're talking about here as we work our way outside of the top 10, I'm just looking at some of the other names there. I know you have one that you want to get to here in a second. One that jumped out to me, I thought was interesting as well, is taking a look really at 13 and 14 just quickly, with Karl Anthony Towns at 13 and then Evan Mobley at 14. Mobley obviously comes on strong here this season for Cleveland, but Karl Anthony Towns, to me, taking in all the factors, he's the guy that has as much of the I wonder what this guy's really worth at the end of the day, because in some regards, that team is almost building up around him and looking beyond him. I think in certain circumstances, he's kind of been a tag along now. Like, what's the hierarchy of the best players on that team, and who do you want to be the leader of that team going forward? Were you surprised by him and seeing Mobley right there at his heels?
Yeah, I think this one is like, it's funny about what some players kind of maybe get the benefit of the doubt and which ones don't. I think like that's another like interesting
Yeah.
theme around this. It's like some guys get the benefit of the doubt of what they can become, and then others get like the lack of benefit of the doubt of like where they are. So I think Towns and Trae kind of fit into the same mold along those lines. It's like,
Mhm.
we're dreaming a little bit about what the upside here is more than like what we've actually seen from it, which is like, again, Cat is elite generational offensive talent. You are going to probably have trouble if he is like your starting five from a defensive standpoint, like
Yep.
always. And so this is another interesting one. Like, you can make a case maybe to slot him up a few spots, or you could, because of that, say, hey, he just makes a lot of money and it's going to be really hard for him to be the very best player in your team to win
Yeah.
a championship. And so it's like, he's just another interesting one where I think he gets the benefit of the doubt. He's going to get paid a ton. He's going to get the super max. Like, they're going to pay him all the money. They should. Like, it's Minnesota. I get it. Most teams, almost every team would do it. But in terms of just like sort of like, he's another example. Does that make sense what I'm saying? Like, it's like,
Yeah.
you're like dreaming of the upside based on the age and all this other stuff, which like, look, you have to do that sometimes. Like, NBA players get better. We've seen it time and time again. We are on a lot of years now of Cat, like, kind of
He's been
topping out,
around. Like,
like
he's been
topping it.
around.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, it's kind of topped out at this point. Like, maybe, I know they made the playoffs this year, and maybe you start dreaming, hey, they get another round further because they make some right moves, and that's correct. But he's another interesting one where I felt like on the list, it was a little dreaming on it more than it was like actually getting it. I think that's that to me, because I have another example of this in a second here, but like where it's dreaming on talent, where, and I can compare it specifically to one of these guys on the Nets.
Well, and I'm going to say, on our way to the man at 21 that you want to discuss, at 19 is Anthony there for the Timberwolves, right? So like, what I found interesting is, and you brought up this context of looking at Anthony Edwards, excuse me, contextualizing it in, well, when you come to the table, what two sides would want to make this move, or who do you think can this player be the best player on a championship team? Like, walk to the table and make a trade with the Timberwolves, I think 9 times out of 10, maybe 99 out of 100, some other team is going to say, I'll take Anthony Edwards, please and thank you, as opposed to saying I'll take Karl Anthony Towns. And I think that's a big factor in these discussions as well, or at least the way we're talking about it. That's as much a factor in it as anything. I right now would look at Anthony Edwards and say, oh, I can dream on his upside in a much more exciting way than what I think Karl Towns is capable of here, to say nothing of the man at 21.
Oh yeah, and just to put a cap on that, like on the Edwards one, they kind of admitted it, like he could be a few spots higher come next season, like another kind of linear progression in terms of his talent. I think he could go up, but I thought it was like, so it's 21. We'll go. It was like Siakam. I'll just go just to just contextualize. I don't want to read the whole list. But Siakam at 17, Jaylen Brown at 18, Anthony Edwards 19, 20, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander SGA, and then 21 was Zion. Now it's funny because Zion, I get it. I get like why you
put high. I'll tell you right now. I think it's way too high.
Okay, so this is the other classic like total benefit of the doubt guy. Now I'm not comparing him to Simmons. He's better than Ben Simmons. Like at his peak, Zion was like among the very best, like truly unique offensive talents in basketball. And like that's it. Like he kind of drove a New Orleans offense in a really, really unique way. Very few players can do it. I get it. But this one, like he just sat out a whole season. He also just sat out a whole season because of injury, where like the shape he was in was really brought into question. There's been massive questions about the weight. Like he's had foot injuries out the wazoo now. Again, he, like Ben Simmons, just also sat out a year. I get that the context is a little different. They both just did not play basketball for an entire season. Let's just call it injury.
But and talked about how there was already the speculation that maybe New Orleans isn't where he wants to be for the next big contract, and just, setting the seeds, I might want to be in a bigger market. So, just factor that in when you're thinking about working me in coming off of an injury.
I'll put it this way. No other player, he's at 21, Kawhi's at 22. Kawhi's got his own questions. He's sat out for a year or two. So like it's they're in that range for different reasons. No other player on in the top 25 has a bigger chance to just drop like 30 spots than Zion, like in one season. And that's where most of these other players, even with like a catastrophic injury, would probably still, short of something like really bad, would probably stick in something like the same range, because a lot of these things you can recover from. Yeah. But with Zion, no other guy, like he could climb 10 spots this year, but he could drop 30, because if he comes in like next year looking big, the burst isn't there, there's a little bit of an injury again, he's struggling to get back on the court, which by the way could totally happen. This is where I felt like they gave him totally the benefit of the doubt. And I do think most teams would risk it here on him in a way they wouldn't risk it on Simmons, because it's like you can dream a little bit more on the upside for sure. But I did think that this was another example of you might have to kind of squint and see it with this. Like there's a lot of huge red flags with Zion.
And I'll tell you right now, all things being equal, before we talk about some of these deeper dive players throughout this list, Bam Adebayo at 23. Yeah. I like my value there on Bam Adebayo a lot, all factors being equal here, than on a guy like Zion. There's a proven track.
You know what you're getting. You know what you're getting.
Exactly.
Like higher floor, lower ceiling. But the floor is so much higher. Like
yeah, I mean again, we're talking about what, an 80-story high rise, not 100, right? Like that's fine, because I know that my floor starts at the 30th, not at maybe the second when it comes to Zion. That's what I'm really surprised about that. And to your point, I think sometimes just the attention, maybe the bigger markets, when we talked about Kevin Durant being impacted by these other guys, or how it's looked at, maybe it's just the major market that brings in the attention more, so then it factors into the way you look at these guys a little bit more.
That's really interesting, right? Because it probably does affect, the way Zion is entering his age 22 season. He's played 0 games since 2021, and he's played 85. He's played 85 total games in his career, because remember, he didn't even make it through a whole rookie season either. So he's played like one kind of fullish season where he again was amazing. Like, so that he was 27 points, 7 rebounds, and was like an unstoppable force on offense. But man, not to like just belabor this, and we'll move on here in a second. But no. I do find
we seem to be really bothered by this now.
Well, and I'm not bothered by it. I just find it's an interesting talking point, and I think your major market piece is actually I totally spot on. You made a couple of really spot on comments here with the trade thing, but like this that's totally spot on, because when the me acting like I'm surprised. It's like, wow, two in 2 days from this guy. Holy cow, dude.
Whoa.
Put that on your resume. You make sure you put that on your resume. Made 2 good points over the span of 48 hours. No, I'm just kidding. No, but the reason I'm bringing that part of it is it actually changed my way of thinking around about how I was thinking about it. But yeah, like major markets can ding your trade value as much as raise it up because the limelight's so much more on you. If Kyrie Irving sat out the vax mandate thing in New Orleans and it just wasn't every day on Get Up or whatever, or like around the horn, maybe people just view it a little bit differently, right? Like it's just because of it. Yeah, I think that's 100%. All right, we're going to get a little bit more into this list here in a second. First, got to tell you about our friends over at Sakara. Look, feeling your best starts with what you eat. Sakara's got you covered there. They're helping you live a healthy, balanced lifestyles and they can make sure you enjoy doing that lifestyle with delicious, plant-rich, transformational nutrition that builds a foundation for living with your best body. It's the time to seek wellness. It's time to seek joy and abundance in all areas of your life. You can start that with what you eat. Sakara is going to get you nutrient-dense meals, snacks, supplements that nourish your body without ever sacrificing taste or quality. Sakara is a wellness company anchored in food as medicine, on a mission to nourish your body through the power of plants. Like I said, it's got those powerful plant-rich ingredients that helps you boost that energy, supports your digestion, curbs those sugar cravings. That can always be a tough one. Gets that skin glowing like Adam Armbrecht is right now. Plus, it's all delivered right to your door, ready to eat right now. You go to Sakara. They're offering our listeners 20% off the first order. You have to go to Sakara. That's SAKARA.com/LockedOn20 enter the code LockedOn20 at checkout. That's Sakara.com/LockedOn20 to get 20% off your first order. Sakara.com/LockedOn20.
2 really smart points plus a bit of a glow. This is a heck of a day for me.
Want to take the rest of the podcast off, buddy? Why don't you sit the rest of this one out? I'll take us home.
Oh boy, heavy lift for you, but I feel like I've earned it. Listen, the other way that we want to look at this list is obviously the NBA Finals going on right now. Golden State Warriors, Boston Celtics, and there were 2 names that I think positionally and what their role is maybe a little bit different to a certain extent, but they represent the same thing. That's Draymond Green and it's Marcus Smart. To me, they are the emotional leader. They are a little bit, I think Draymond to a far greater extent, they're pet monsters, right? You hate to play against them. You love to have them be a part of their team. But what I found fascinating is when you look at where they land on this list, Draymond Green, with age and money and all things being factored in, is 46th on this list for the Golden State Warriors. Marcus Smart finds himself at 50th. Like, are you surprised by that? Because just on its surface, if you just said, hey, who do you want? I think I understand there's the size impact and what Draymond can do for you defensively and everything else. Marcus Smart to me would be my pick here. I'm not saying that they're out of whack entirely. I certainly think that Draymond Green is deserving of being a little bit further down this list because I don't know a lot of teams that are banging down the door to get Draymond on their roster.
Yeah, sometimes these guys that are like so perfect for the systems that their team runs are so hard to figure out in terms of like what their value is. Look, Nets have had examples of this, like Bruce Brown's like this on a very different level, but like it's sometimes hard to know what the value of
Bruce
a guy
Brown
is.
On this top 100
It's like,
list.
yeah, because it's like to the Warriors, Draymond's like a top 15 guy in the league because like in terms of trade value, because they need him, what he does so badly. And we're recording this prior to Game 3, by the way. So if anything happened, that's the only reason you wouldn't hear that reference. But in terms of like, they would rank him so much higher, but then other teams might rank him so much lower, and then that's where the list probably just jams him right in the middle of those 2 numbers, right? Because the Warriors might rank him at 20 or something like that, or 25. That's probably being fair, like something like 25, because they know exactly how important he is to what they do. And then another team would have to just ding him like 20 spots going the other way because they wouldn't know. And it'd be too scary to have like a non-shooter if you didn't have all these other guys. And so I think that number is more around the other team not knowing more than it is like to what the Warriors would accept in terms of a trade. I think Smart's like that to some degree, not exactly. I think it's a little easier to see how Marcus Smart fits in with your team than it is Draymond. Yeah. Maybe just from that reason alone, he slots in higher because every team would know kind of exactly what he would bring.
Right. His role is his role. Like, yeah. You can
one guy before we get out of here, one guy we never mentioned. Did you see where Harden was on the list?
Oh, I did.
Yeah.
I rolled through
52.
52.
Yeah,
Yeah.
52. Take that, James Harden. Take that.
There's no context to that. You know what? Speaking of great points, right there, Doug Norrie just
Yeah, we're gonna get
nailing
all
it.
of other guys. Get all other guys trade value dumpstered. Well, get your trade value dumpstered too. Like,
Take that, you son of a.
because 52. Because if we did Locked On, I'll tell you right now, if we were doing Locked On Sixers as our podcast, I'm sure we'd be having this conversation around like This whole conversation would be around Harden,
Yeah.
because now, if you think about what just got traded in the offseason, Harden for Simmons, that seemed like, as high a profile trade as you could really ever have in the NBA. Man, it's like one of the all timers, like in terms of just high profile and just the ramp up to it and all the stories. And then one guy's 52 and the other guy's like 90, almost off the list. Like it's just so funny about it's where Harden landed. Any of these other guys stand out to you before we close out?
Yeah, it was funny. I thought as I'm rolling through the list, like Julius Randle being 67 seems interesting to me because his
would have been like
value,
35 last year or something like that.
Right. And by the way, yeah, could have been a top 40, top 35 guy last year. I think should be closer to 85 this year. And again, he's probably one of the most volatile names on the list because get him out of New York or restructure things there and he gets back into form. But he's a surprising one to me because he doesn't have a lot of money on, he has 106 actually left on the books for him. So he's a weird one to me that jumped out. I'll just say, because I'm rolling through these 77. To me, Mr. Valanciunas, like I think that guy's deserving of being higher. He's only got 30 million left on the books. Like sometimes this is what's funny, and I wonder if any names jumped out to you here, just around the idea of like, you know what? Sometimes like there's certain players that should be higher based on, well, that's a nice little drop in value for almost any team, right? You know what he can do for you. And I'm not elevating Valanciunas to some high standard, but I mean, God, you tell me right now, give me Valanciunas over Julius Randle in this moment right now. Sometimes role players, as we've talked about, are deserving of higher value because the cost isn't as much. The next contract isn't going to be as much. And there's far less volatility around, is this guy going to be available? Is he committed? Guess what? Those factors tend to go away when you're not a superstar talent.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, and I think that again, like I do think when it's it can't be 100% analytical approach to this all the time because you're factoring in three things that seemingly have nothing to do with each other, right, which is talent right now and in the future, age right now and in the future, and then money right now, and then what you're going to have to pay them in the future, or what you're like, you know what I mean? So like those three things on their own are completely unrelated to each other, and so that's where like the list does become weird, and I'm sure. I agree with you. I'd trade Valanciunas like right now for like a lot of these pieces, but it does become very, very difficult to think about it because when you get to these parts of the list, it kind of actually just matters who's on your team. That's really more than anything else.
Let's close on this quickly here. The last two guys on this list, you mentioned it before we started this episode, in Porzingis is the 100th. I didn't realize just ahead of him is Nurkic for Portland. Yeah. Like to me, that is insult right now for a guy like Nurkic. I know he had some injury concerns, whatever, but he's a guy that feels like can a little bit of shot from the perimeter, stretch a little bit, good defensive presence. Like he's a well-balanced player. To be talking about a guy that's still at the right age, the next contract isn't going to be seismic, I don't think. Like I'm shocked that he isn't. Like Julius Randle, Nurkic, I'm taking Nurkic and what he could do for me. And you're talking about almost a 40 position gap here on this list.
Yeah, these last three the last three in the list is because like Christian Wood, Nurkic, and Staps are like the last three. I thought all three of them felt pretty low. I think like all three things considered. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Nurkic like the injury piece. Staps is like, well, it didn't really work with Luka, but maybe it was kind of working a little in Washington. Mm-hmm. Like, and so, but the injury stuff, I don't know. It always gets so difficult. I do think that like in terms, just to cap this off, I think, and we'll just round this out from a Nets perspective, because we mentioned where Kyrie was on the 50s. And I think like, Simmons is, in the 90s right now.
Any Brooklyn net other Brooklyn net that should have been in the top 100?
Nah, not in the top 100, I don't think. But I think I in some ways, I kind of feel like we don't even need to like watch this season that's coming up, and we just can check in on this trade value thing next season, and we'll just know exactly how it went. And I won't even need to read the recaps. Yep. Like I'll just look at the list. And I'll know exactly how the whole Nets season. Maybe I'll just do that. Take the whole season off in the podcast. Don't watch a single game. Come June, whatever, next year, I'll go to the Hoops Hype trade value list. I'm like, ooh, Kyrie 75, Simmons off the list. And that means the Nets didn't make the play.
Why would you do it like that? I was going to go right.
Or
number one
Kyrie,
for Kevin
Kyrie's
Durant.
24. Simmons is 30. KD's 6, and we won the championship.
There you go. You're right. Hey, listen, guys, we'll see you next summer. This has been great. We had a lot of fun.
Good luck. Yeah, that's all the content. All right, we're gonna get out of here. We will be going to be back next week. We'll hopefully have a little more clarity around some of the off-season moves as we move through the finals. Might have a recap on some of these final games as well as we move into the next season, where that is landed. And like I said, there's a chance there's some movement that we get some more clarity on where the Kyrie Irving situation is headed. In the meantime, make sure you subscribe to the podcast on all not podcast platforms, but if you listen to podcasts, we're over there too. Podcast platforms, we're free and available on all those. Make sure you subscribe over to YouTube as well.
Hey guys, stars are shining bright above. Night breezes seem to whisper, I love you. Birds singing the sycamore tree. Dream a little dream of me. Ella Fitzgerald.
Oh, RIP, one of the greats. We'll be back again next week talking more Brooklyn Nets basketball.